Hello, hello. Welcome to our very first podcast of Life Unscripted. This podcast is going to be dedicated around the clock for free information to flourish, so come see what it's like to hear opinions and unbiased truths that circle this big earth we call our home. I'm a little confident but nervous as this world goes around. I would like to say, for starters, we're going to be diving into a lot of different fascinating topics here. We're going to make sure that they're kind of in between informational and fun. We're not trying to do anything too internalized here. We want it to be out to the public for a reason. So with that being said, I would like to give everybody here a happy Veterans Day. We should be thanking these men and women for what they have done for this country on a daily basis. Just because we sit at home doesn't mean that there isn't gunfire somewhere around this world. Alright, so officially, let us start with one of the more talked about topics in the recent years, and that is Donald Trump's victory in this 2024 election cycle. I have a couple of different things we're going to talk about here. First and foremost, these are going to be podcasts delivering all types of information, anything from sports, music, weather, what have you. It's all going to be here. So keep an eye out on these types of things as we go through here. So our former and our now president-elect often skipped over details, but through more than a year of policy pronouncements and written statements outlined a wide-ranging agenda that blends traditional conservative approaches to taxes, regulation, and cultural issues with a more populist bend to trade and a shift in America's international role. Let's fast forward here to current day. A combination of populist rhetoric, strong nationalistic sentiments, and a promise to drain the swamp. That was of the 2020 National Convention here that gave Trump a little bit, I would say, positive and negative feedback, which probably made him and disliked more than normal. But we need to understand the difference between political campaigns and smear campaigns, something that Trump has been under fire for ever since he started to look into the politics and calling himself a Republican. Ultimately, we saw a record number of voter turnout. And while Trump won big in the key states like Florida and Texas, it wasn't enough to overcome Biden's blue wall in the states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. But as 2024 rolled around, that was the complete opposite. Over 10 to 20% more of an upticking in Donald Trump's popular vote, and the electoral colleges really gave him that shutting speech of being able to let Americans know that there's more going on than what meets the eye, and he might just be the guy for the job. And we're going to see through these last 4 years he's got here before somebody else runs. A big thing with Trump is always going to be his tariffs in this trade, of course. Trump's posture on international trade is to distrust world markets as harmful to America's interests. He proposes tariffs of 10 to 20% on foreign goods, and in some speeches has mentioned even higher percentages. Now keep a note. As the Associated Press puts these types of articles out here, you have to understand that there's going to be bias, and this is where I'm coming into play here. We're going to dissect just a little bit of this so we can understand what's really going on versus what they want us to know. These tariffs, he isn't the only person to talk about them. There was a president before. Tariffs have been around for a very long time, and if you have to impose these on countries who aren't going to play their role and play the responsibility of their governments, then they need to make sure that this stuff gets fixed. And that is why America is going to be put first, regardless if that makes it a good or bad thing. But so far, all those tariffs can do for us is put more money into our pockets. So we'll see if he can handle a balance between tariffs and a free governance of being able to keep your American citizens wealthy and healthy. The federal government to buy essential medications only from U.S. companies. He pledges to block purchases of any vital infrastructure in the U.S. by Chinese buyers. The presidential power he withholds. The president-elect seeks to reduce the role of federal bureaucrats and regulations across economic sectors. Trump frames all regulatory cuts as an economic magic wand. He pledges precipitous drops in U.S. household utility bills, removing obstacles, fossil fuel production, including opening all federal lands for exploration. Their approach in many ways strengthened executive branch influence. That power would come more directly from the White House. So as we skip through a little bit of this, so far we are trying to gather here that what he's trying to do here is to listen to the American people. Now, we all know that he's a loudmouth. Being that he's from New York, born and raised, I mean, it's only a small percentage as to what's made Donald Trump, probably more than a little. But I'm more excited about the education. I've been talking about reform for years now. I think it's very important that people understand that the kids are what's going to run this country over the years, and Donald Trump, at the end of his own life, I mean, who knows how long he's going to live? It could be 2 million years, not really. But at the end of the day, we need to understand that he wants to abolish that tenure and adopt a merit pay for teachers and scrap diversity programs at all levels of education. Now, when they talk about this is diversity programs being scrapped so they can be reformed and fixed. This isn't him abolishing it and getting rid of it forever. This is the type of rhetoric that these types of news articles are going to talk about here, and you need to understand that. You need to take it with a grain of salt here. He calls for a federal funding for any school or program publishing critical race theory, gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, and political content for our children. A fun fact here, this is how Rome fell. It was through society. It wasn't through war. It wasn't through money. It had to do with their society. There was so much division going on, and that's what America was kind of seeing a sneak peek of, kind of the fall of a democracy. Now, Republicans and Democrats are one of the same. They just play the different roles and different numbers and different games. That's what they do. Trump's proposing on the higher education is the accreditation processes for colleges. A movie describes as a secret weapon against the Marxist maniacs and lunatics. He says control higher education. Trump takes aim at higher education endowments, saying he will collect billions and billions of dollars. To make billions and billions of dollars from schools via taxing fining. Suing excessively large private university endowments at schools that do not comply with his edicts. What this pretty much is saying here is that he's going to have more of a role played in the way that our higher education is paid and used. And I think that's kind of important because there's a lot of these professors out here who are teaching rhetoric and societal standards. They aren't teaching you to go out into the world and actually enjoy it, to actually make a difference. They're telling you if you stay the same, you can make a difference. That's not the way we should be playing any of that. All right, so let's dive into just the Social Security, the Medicare and Medicaid for everybody here. He's always going to be protecting the older citizens, the people who need it. And I think that's something important that Trump has always emphasized here. These programs geared towards older Americans and among the biggest pieces of the federal spending pie each year. There's questions about his proposal, not the tax tip. The overtime wages might affect Social Security and Medicare. If such plans eventually involve only income taxes, the entitlement programs will be affected. But exempting those wages from payroll taxes would reduce the funding stream, Social Security, and the Medicare outlays. Trump has talked little about Medicaid during this campaign, but his first administration reshaped the program by allowing states to introduce work requirements and recipients. I think it's very important for Americans to sit down and actually contemplate what is going on when it comes to the world, especially in America. We often tend to think that we're the only ones who are here, especially people who have never been outside of their state and or country. I mean, that makes a big role in once people can understand what is going on within the world, then America is first and foremost the one that all the other countries look at. And that's important to understand here because as this election cycle moves over to a different presidential candidate slash elect, Donald Trump, we're going to find out just what's going to happen in these next couple of years. 4 years, 6, 8, 10, a decade or two later. It's going to make a big crucial impact on what's going on. Alright, so let's dive into a little bit of something that I'm more happy to talk about here, as I do already have an Ocean Conservancy channel dedicated. It's anything from motivation to donations to Ocean Conservancy, and also just showing the men and women who are out there every day putting their life on the line, so to speak, surfing. Watching those waters can really give you a peace of mind, that is for dang sure. Let's shift these gears though. We're going to talk about something that directly affects us all, no matter where we live, the health of our oceans. You know, our ocean's about 71% of the Earth's surface, not 70, not 69, 72. It's around 71% and probably some, 71.1117. I don't know. But that Earth's surface is very important to us. So we need to think about that for a second. Our oceans aren't just a backdrop to life. They're vital in all aspects. They regulate our climate, they provide oxygen, jobs, they're home to countless species of some we still don't fully understand, which we can dive into in another podcast there because that's a whole entire 15 minutes on its own. The problem we have right now is our oceans are kind of in trouble. We have a lot of overfishing going on with the way that a couple of these communist regimes play a part in ignoring our deals, so to speak, our rules and regulations here. Plastic pollution is also very bad right now. The climate change is wreaking a little bit of havoc on the marine ecosystems. We're starting to see a lot more warmer waters where they're not supposed to be. A lot of these fishes, a lot of these mammals, are ending up going to different portions of the ocean, which is changing the way that our vegetation, so to speak, is completely changed into a different horizon. When you think about all that plastic that's in our oceans these days, it's way into food chains, impacting marine life and ultimately humans too. And it's not just the plastic. Overfishing has depleted our fish populations in many regions. But let's talk about that plastic for a second, because that doesn't just turn into ocean conservancy. That just turns into the Earth trying to make sure it's able to do what it can. Mother Earth needs a little bit of help from now and again, right? So we're starting to find microplastics found in dolphin breath for the first time, right? This is 2024. We are living in unbelievable times as it is. Research suggests the marine animals are inhaling pollutants when they come up for air, with even rural populations affected here. That is a classic bottlenose dolphin. Studied those back then. Still beautiful creatures. Right, microplastics have been found in dolphin breath for the first time, according to a study that suggests the marine mammals are inhaling potentially harmful contaminants when they come up for air. The U.S. search team, whose preliminary findings are published in the journal PLOS One, are concerned about the potential impact of inhaled plastics on the animal's lungs. They found that microplastics in the exhaled breath from 11 bottlenose dolphins sampled, leading them to believe the inhaled plastics were airborne. Ultimately, you might be asking yourself, what does that even mean? It means that possibly through time, these dolphins are going to change the way that their genetic structure happens. So when they end up having more babies, there's going to be more chance of these dolphins, the bottleneck ones, having a more hard time to be able to breathe. They're going to probably have to go to different portions of the oceans because of this. They won't talk about that right now as it's not happening, but these are only common sense ideas, right? This is logic dictating when something like microplastics are inside of mammals who are supposed to be inside the ocean, which provides them oxygen and food and a home. I mean, that's a very important thing here. The microplastics found in these dolphins' breath samples were polyester, a common polymer used to make clothes, which shed huge amounts of particles when washed, especially in hot cycles. The fact that dolphins have a much larger lung capacity and are taking deep breaths may mean they are exposed to higher doses of microplastics than human. I mean, over time, you can only imagine. It's kind of like if you never change your oil, eventually all those little crusted bits of that engine is gonna stick there. And if you don't get that clean, guess what? Adverse side effects happen, right? Worldwide, humans and wildlife are exposed to tiny particles of plastic pollution known as microplastics in air, water, food. They can be linked to adverse health impacts that we just talked about: indigestion, inhalation. Studies in humans have indicated plastic inhalation can lead to lung inflammation and other respiratory issues. We're just starting to understand how dolphins are exposed to microplastics, said Hart, who had studied plastics and dolphins for a decade. Researchers worked with the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program at Brookfield Zoo, Chicago, and the National Marine Mammal Foundation. Microplastics were found in exhaled breath in more rural of the two areas. Likelihood of microplastics being transported by air, Hart said, right? The researchers were particularly concerned about the potential impact on dolphins in the Barataria Bay area because the citizens have already suffered poor pulmonary health due to the Deepwater Horizon oil spill disaster in 2010. I think it's important that when we look at this stuff, we understand what's going on a daily basis. You know, if you have a bad habit, you're going to continue with that bad habit because you think that's part of your life now. This is the same thing that's going on with people. They don't know what's going on, so they continue to do it. And this is a problem that we're going to be seeing for a while now. And I think it's going to be important. The World Economic Forum already has a plan involved with Ocean Conservancy, so I think during time we're going to find that it's a little bit easier to handle as long as people come together about it. It's not too late to turn things around, but we need to act faster in that regard. Sustainable fishing practices, cutting down on single-use plastics, and committing to carbon reduction. These are all things that we can do to help protect the oceans. And to be honest, and if we don't, the future of our oceans, and by an extension humanity, it kind of starts to look a little grim over there, you know? So far, though, we are going to find out just what a difference between a Biden-Harris and Trump-Vance presidency is going to look like. So we'll see how this turns the page, so to speak, to see if they promise something they can promise, or if they're just half-empty promises here. Right, so our segment 3 is going to be impacted on our crypto. I think it's very important that our crypto gets a little bit of a look at here since that Donald Trump victory. We all know that Donald Trump is for a free world. Democrats are for a free world, but they also like to tend to play the game of we can give you more security and peace if you listen to us more. And that's probably the big difference that swayed a lot of voters this year. But Bitcoin has been rallied above 88,000 on Monday. That is a record beyond all types of means, right? I think that's very important to look at here. There's a lot of crypto out there that are probably going to be bought out or destroyed once the bank institutes their own crypto. That is probably going to ultimately take out the American dollar. All those coins, all that good stuff, you should probably be saving them right now. I'm just saying. So our Bitcoin Monday spiked to an all-time high Monday of November 11th. Happy Veterans Day. Again, it was at an all-time high today of 88,448 according to CoinDesk data. At 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the digital currency was at $76,783. It was up 14% over 4 sessions starting with Election Day. We can go into a little bit of this, but I pretty much got this under the bag here. So when you're looking at investment, especially when it comes to crypto, it's going to be volatile. It's going to go up and down like none other. That's just how it's always going to be. But you can keep in mind, and Bitcoin is always going to be your witness point. If you can understand what Bitcoin's going to be doing, you're going to see what ultimately at least 85% of the rest of those cryptos are going to be going towards. The idea back then was 100,000 for Bitcoin. I mean, who's to say it won't go up to 200,000, right? I mean, this is just people talking about speculation. Be honest here. Not everybody in this world who puts an article out there knows exactly what they're talking about just because they do a couple hours of research. New investors to this digital asset space should remain cautious about bad actors. Strategic development at crypto security firm CoinCover. Bitcoin's volatility makes it attractive to new investors, but people should take the time to educate themselves around the risks of any bull market. One of the most important trends that investors should be aware of is the correlation between new market entrants and the rise in malicious activity, which another thing that is going to be overhauled with Donald Trump here. He's always protected America's infrastructure, and I think that's something that's quite important for a country who's over 200-300 years old now. This Bitcoin-fueled rally, though, has already generated 3 ETFs of $1.63 billion in inflows during the election week last week, offset by a total of $657.9 million in outflows on Monday and Tuesday, according to data from Farside Investors. BlackRock's iShare Bitcoin was the week's clear leader with a total of $1.2 billion inflows. If you remember anything from Donald Trump's first assassination attempt, all of Trump's BlackRock short sold some of Trump's stocks before that assassination plot came into hand. Now that Donald Trump is the elect, BlackRock is taking a big chunk of that $1.2 billion in inflows, which is just going to show more of a change here between what BlackRock wants in their company versus what actually works. That's very important. I'm a firm believer that you should never have too much of one thing. You shouldn't have just all Republicans. You shouldn't have just all Democrats. You shouldn't have just all independents. It needs to be a fair share of people who are on the right side for the right reasons. I think that Bitcoin thing is going to be quite important as we work into this 2024 to 2025 year. AI is making a transforming industry from healthcare to finance to entertainment. AI is part of this crypto enhancement, so to speak, that transformation. But I think the great thing about AI is it's also helping in solving some major global challenges in healthcare. You know, in agriculture, AI helps farmers monitor crop health and optimize their yields. And in the fight against climate change, of course, AI is being used to track emissions and predict climate patterns more accurately. One thing is for sure, though, AI, especially crypto-based, it's here to stay, and its potential is limitless. But we have to manage it a little bit more carefully than we have been. We can't just have people in power thinking that they know what they're doing. This ends up turning into a classic Marvel film where there's a whole bunch of good guys, but a whole bunch of those villains trying to tell you what you're supposed to do. But with that being said, it could end up reshaping society in ways that we're not really prepared for. And that yin and yang of life right there is going to be a big stepping stone in the way that we do things. Right then, that is all the time we have for that very first podcast of Life Unscripted. As we continue on this beautiful, unbiased journey of information, I would like to let you know that everyone in this world is important, no matter how small, how big. It's a part of the lives of every single person here on this earth to understand and make sure that a small change is the biggest change this world can make. If a 386 plus million Americans can make a small change every day, I think this world would be a quite different place for the better. We'll leave you with a quote before this outro for everyone listening. My friends, love is better than anger. Hope is better than fear. Optimism is better than despair. So let us be loving, hopeful, and optimistic. and we'll change the world. Jack Layton. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the Life Unscripted Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode if you found it useful. Stay curious, and take care.